So another verb form that I want to make sure that we talk about are participles. So participles are a verb form. We use them quite frequently in English. Before we jump into talking about participles and participle phrases, I want to make sure that we are comfortable with the difference between a phrase and a clause. So just as a reminder, a phrase has no finite verb, right, which means a verb with tense, and it has no grammatical subject. Okay. A clause, however, has a finite verb, and it has a grammatical subject. Okay, so that is the main distinction between the two, which is why we are going to be talking about participle phrases. Participle phrases are forms of the verb with no tense, and no clear grammatical subject. So let's go ahead and jump in. So participles themselves are verbs that end in ing or ed/en without the required auxiliary or modal verbs. Okay. Um, so this is quite important. They need to exist by themselves to be without tense and without a grammatical subject. So one of the interesting things about participle phrases is that they can function like nouns, adjectives, and adverbs. Okay. So the only thing they really can't function as is verbs, finite verbs in particular. They have logical but not grammatical subjects. Okay. And once again, I'm going to put subjects in scare quotes because it doesn't have one. It's implied, it's not stated. And one form that participle phrases can take is gerunds. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what a gerund is. Most commonly, a gerund refers to um, when a participle has a noun function. Okay. And so I am going to give you a couple of examples of what that might be like. So I could say learning was fun. Okay. Learning here is my participle. I could also say having learned was fun, right? Having learned is my participle. Or well, I'll save the last one for a slightly different situation. In both of these cases, the participle is functioning like the subject of the sentence, right? The main verb is was, fun is a subject complement. So the participle in both instances is filling the role or the function of a noun, by filling, right, the role of the subject in the sentence. Okay. We're going to continue a little bit. Along with gerunds, it is important to realize that participles can be conventionalized into nouns. And I will give you example. I could say a reading, or I could say the readings, right? So reading, despite being a verb, can be preceded by a determiner and made plural. So it has been conventionalized into a noun because we use it that way so frequently. Additionally, as you saw above, participles can be periphrastic, right? Meaning they have more than one word. So having learned is a participle, but it's a two-word participle. So it is periphrastic. And I will just write that here as an example. Okay. Um, Next thing to be aware of is that participle phrases can modify a noun when it exists in a pre-noun position. So in a pre-noun position, and I will show you what I mean. Running late, right? She drove too quickly. So here, running is my participle. So the participle phrase running late describes she. So it's modifying that noun, right? She was running late. So then it's in the pre-noun position. So it is modifying the noun in that way. Additionally, and really like the last kind of main way that participle phrases can function, is it can function as adverbials. Okay. And if it functions like an adverbial, it is always an adjunct, right? So that means it's always excess, so unnecessary to the sentence as a whole. And it is dangling if it's not next to the logical subject. Okay, and I'll put that in scare quotes. And let me go ahead and give you an example. Um, Having been learned, okay, the equation was easy to use. Okay. So here we have our participle phrase. We could simply just say the sentence, the equation was easy to use. It makes sense on its own, right? It's a core or an independent clause. So here, the participle phrase is adding additional information. And in that way, it's functioning as an adverbial adjunct. So even though participles technically are verbs, they're not finite verbs, so they fill very different functions in sentences. So our form function trees are very helpful for distinguishing the form that some of these words take from the function that they actually fill in the sentence itself.